Hello and welcome to the RotoBaller ranking special for Week 15 of the NFL season, the Fantasy Football Playoffs. In this video, I'm going to give you our RotoBaller site rankings for the quarterback and running back position. Just as a heads up, this is being recorded on Thursday afternoon, so if you're watching this later and you're looking for up-to-the-minute information and rankings, you can click that link below. That will take you to our site rankings, which are constantly updated. So we're going to start right now with the quarterback position. You'll see a lot of familiar faces in the top 5 of our rankings this week. We have Kyler Murray 1, we have Justin Herbert 2, Tom Brady 3, Josh Allen 4, and Aaron Rodgers 5. Obviously, there's a couple injury concerns here with the guys in the top 5. For Kyler Murray, it's not an injury for himself, but an injury to DeAndre Hopkins, who's now out for the season. That is obviously a knock against Murray. However, with Christian Kirk and A.J. Green and Zach Ertz and Rondale Moore, he does still have a lot of good options in that offense. Chase Edmonds is coming back as well. We know that he's also valuable in the passing game. And Murray has had enough weeks now from his own ankle injury that he's back to 100%, which adds that rushing upside that we really like to see. So Kyler Murray is still somebody we are very confident about. Josh Allen obviously has a little bit of a knock here because of his foot injury. He's dealing with a little bit of some people call it a sprained foot. Other people are saying mild turf toe. As of Thursday, Allen has said that the injury is better than it was at the end of the Bucs game on Sunday. And if he can play, he will play. Considering how massively important this game is for the Bills, I think we should assume that Allen is going to play. He's down here at 4 in a pretty good matchup against Carolina because that rushing upside might not be what it is in the past. I mean, obviously in the Bucs game, rushing for over 100 yards. However, Allen is still going to be the goal line back, and even if he doesn't have full mobility, if the Bills are in the red zone or down inside the 5 or 10, expect Allen to kind of be that driving force. Outside of the top 5, we have Patrick Mahomes at 6, Matt Stafford at 7, Dak Prescott at 8, Jalen Hurts at 9, and Taysom Hill at 10. Matt Stafford is an interesting name here because with Darrell Henderson banged up and Sony Michel not really as effective as Darrell Henderson Jr. has been, the Rams have really relied on the pass. And Stafford has been looking pretty good after some concerns about his back a few weeks ago. So Stafford is somebody we feel pretty confident in rolling out there this week. We know, obviously, that he has a really talented set of wide receivers. OBJ has looked pretty good since coming over to the Rams. They did have to close their facility earlier this week for some COVID issues, so that is something to keep an eye on. Tyler Higbee was out last week. So make sure that Stafford does have his full complement of options, but he's somebody that we feel pretty good about using in a high-volume passing attack. And then obviously Jalen Hurts and Taysom Hill are here because of really high rushing upside. We know that Philadelphia is going to want to run the ball, especially because Washington has a lot of injuries on that defensive line. Or sorry, not injuries, COVID-related illnesses, guys that are on the COVID IR and might miss this game. If that's the case, and the kind of teeth is taken out of this Washington defensive front, I think you can expect not only a rushing attack for the Eagles running backs, but also for Jalen Hurts as well. And there really won't be as much pressure on him, which should kind of raise his floor a little bit. And then Taysom Hill, he got saved a little bit by a late 40-something yard touchdown against the Jets. The matchup is a little bit harder this week, but still somebody who has value with the rushing, with his legs, and the rushing attack, which will kind of boost the floor. And then our options outside of the top 10, we have Kirk Cousins at 11, Lamar Jackson at 12, Tua Tagovailoa at 13, Joe Burrow at 14, and Justin Fields at 15. Lamar is obviously somebody you want to keep an eye on, dealing with that ankle injury that had him carted off the field last week. Even if he plays, he's not going to be at 100%, I would imagine, so that rushing attack is not going to be what we're used to seeing out of him. However, we know that he's a dynamic playmaker, and it's a decent matchup against the Packers. So Lamar could still be valuable, and he's still somebody you probably want to be starting if we get the sense that he is going to play in this game. And Justin Fields is in the top 15. He's somebody who you could feel comfortable starting. He's somebody who some people might have a little bit higher. He's looked pretty good in his last few starts before the rib injury and then after the rib injury. He's passing a little bit more accurately, and most importantly, Chicago is scheming up plays to use his legs a little bit more, and that's something that will raise his floor, much like we talked about with Taysom Hill and Justin Fields. And now we're going to move to the running back position. But first, if you haven't yet, please click that like and subscribe button to get all of our content for the fantasy football playoffs. And now into the running back rankings. Number 1, we have Dalvin Cook. Number 2, Jonathan Taylor. Number 3, Alvin Kamara. Number 4, Leonard Fournette. And number 5, Austin Eckler. Eckler's here because of some concerns about that ankle. As we said, we're recording this video on Thursday, so by the time you watch this, Eckler will have already played and we'll know more about what his ankle situation is. Cook looked great coming off the injury. I don't think anybody really expected that from him. Jonathan Taylor's in a tough matchup against New England, but it's Jonathan Taylor, so you're obviously going to play him, same as these other guys in the top 5. Outside of the top 5, we have Nick Chubb at 6, Najee Harris at 7, Joe Mixon at 8, James Conner at 9, and David Montgomery at 10. James Conner is somebody to keep an eye on because he also, like DeAndre Hopkins, suffered an injury at the end of that Arizona game on Monday night. His is an ankle injury, less severe than Hopkins, but as of Thursday, we're not 100% sure what Conner's health level will be for that game. So that is something you want to keep an eye on. If he plays, he's looking really great, even with Chase Edmonds is back. Conner is the red zone back and the early down back. He's played too well to see too many options, too many plays other than in receiving work. So Conner's somebody that if he's playing, you should feel confident rolling out there. Harris and Chubb, massive workloads. Nick Chubb dinged a little bit this week because there's some injuries on the offensive line, some COVID health on the offensive line. The Browns are going to be super short-handed, but without Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb's going to get a lot of work, so even if it's not as good as it usually is, a lot of work is what we like, and that's the same thing with Najee Harris as well. Outside of the top 10, we have Javonte Williams at 11. We have Aaron Jones at 12. We have Elijah Mitchell at 13, Saquon Barkley at 14, and Ezekiel Elliott, at 15. Javonte Williams has looked awesome. He's still splitting carries with Melvin Gordon, so we can't really move him higher than this, but he has looked super dynamic. They're just like running, so there's going to be enough options for both of those guys. So Javonte is definitely somebody that should be in your lineups. Elijah Mitchell, we hope he's back this week. So you got to keep an eye on that because the Thursday and Friday practice will be super important to determine if he's going to play. Saquon and Zeke, they're just not as healthy. Barkley's healthier than Zeke, but that offense is a mess. Mike Glennon's probably going to start again. So the Giants offense just can't really get anything. Zeke is now getting the majority of the workload because Tony Pollard is dealing with plantar fasciitis, but he just hasn't really looked as explosive. I know he says he feels great, but if you watch Zeke play, I just don't think this is the same running back that he was before. He still runs with good power, but he's not really breaking big runs with the knee injury. So he's somebody that you should still play, but he's more of a high-end running back 2 as opposed to the running back 1 that we're used to. Outside of the top 15, we have Antonio Gibson, 16, Josh Jacobs, 17, Melvin Gordon, 18, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 19, and Donta Foreman, 20. Gibson and Jacobs are both 2 guys to watch out for because we mentioned last week that Jalen Richard and J.D. McKissick, the passing down backs, were practicing. Both of them didn't play. Richard was still on COVID IR, and McKissick is coming back from a concussion. So with another week, we're another week more likely that those 2 guys are going to be available. If they're available, they will cut into a lot of the passing down work for these 2 guys that have seen massive upticks in volume over the last couple of weeks. So that's something to keep in mind. They remain solid running back 2s, but if they don't have the massive workload, I don't think you're going to get running back 1 value from them. Aaron Jones is in a timeshare with A.J. Dillon, but he's still getting a lot of the red zone work as we saw at the 2 touchdowns last week. So he's somebody you need to keep in your lineups. And then we talked about Melvin Gordon. We talked about Javonte Williams. There's so much volume there. And Donta Foreman is really interesting. I know there's a massive split in the workload there with the Titans, but he is the early down back. He is getting the majority of the first and second down carries, and he is the red zone back. So if they get into opportunities in the red zone, he is going to get those high volume touches. It's a decent matchup. It's a much better matchup than people seem to think given recent results. So I think Donta Foreman is somebody who you could play as a solid RB2. And then rounding out the RB2s in the bottom half of it, we have Rashad Penny, 21. We have James Robinson, 22. Sony Michel, 23. And Devonta Freeman, 24. This is a really interesting group of guys. Rashad Penny obviously had a great game last week. We do have to keep in mind it was against the Texans. So you should feel confident putting Penny in your lineup. Alex Collins is the only other healthy back, and he just looks toast right now. But this isn't the same matchup. I don't think you can expect an explosion for Penny. James Robinson is super interesting because there's no more Urban Meyer. So without Urban Meyer, we might see James Robinson become the focal point of the offense again, but it's a massive question mark. We don't know what that usage is going to be like. We don't know if that offense is just going to all of a sudden get better. It still could be a little bit of a train wreck, but he's obviously somebody you need to put in your lineups. Sony Michel, keep an eye on Darrell Henderson news. And then Devonta Freeman is the RB1. If Lamar Jackson doesn't play, that's a lot of carries for Devonta Freeman. So he's somebody that you should still play. He's been pretty consistent, even if not, explosive over the last few weeks. Some options outside of the running back 2 value that we like, you should keep an eye on. Ramondre Stevenson, we have 30th. Darrell Henderson Jr., we have 36th. And Michael Carter, we have 39th. Damian Harris suffered a hamstring injury against the Bills and is reportedly not 100% already, even after a bye week. So if Harris is limited or not playing, Ramondre Stevenson will definitely kind of skyrocket up our rankings, so that's somebody to keep an eye on. Darrell Henderson Jr., if he plays, is going to move up our rankings. He's got that thigh issue. It's something to keep an eye on. And then Michael Carter is likely back for the Jets. He was looking really good before. So he's somebody who we definitely want to be playing in deep leagues or considering in flex leagues, or in a flex spot, if he's active. Just know that Zach Wilson is not going to check down as much as Mike White did. So there's kind of no real passing down work for Carter or limited passing volume work for Carter, but he was getting the majority of the rushes. Hit us up in the comments if you have any start-sit questions that you want answered. Make sure to click the link to like and subscribe, and also tune in for our wide receiver tight end video if you haven't yet.